Eh bien, welcome back
to this Forum 2020. It's a great pleasure to meet you again. There were many this morning and many this afternoon again. 5 minutes ago, more than 330 followers. And I would like to welcome the people from Luxembourg, Germany, Belgium, France, the Netherlands, but also from Canada, India, following us here today. Also from Australia, Albania, Sweden. Welcome to this forum, and I hope you will enjoy this afternoon. This will be a very rich afternoon. I'm going to introduce our next workshop in a few minutes, followed by a workshop on the new generation, and our guest of honor, who will be arriving around 4:45. And I heard him yesterday evening. I spent my evening with him yesterday. I can tell you it's worth staying until then. It's great. You really need to be there to listen to Riyad Salem. Please don't give up. You will absolutely not regret it. You know that we like things to be concrete. At IMS, practice is much better than theory, and in the questions you asked earlier on, we found that there was a lot of interest in the topic of infobesity. How do you do things, how practically? And we're going to give you more for your money this afternoon. For more than an hour, you will be able to attend a panel, and we're not two, not 5, more than 10. There will be 10 people following each other with different profiles, practitioners, one doctor in neuroscience, a labor doctor, very practical things to understand how to do things in practice. Young lady, how should we do this? Thank you, Christian, for this introduction. Thank you all for being with us today. Welcome to this platform. Let's take the first step. At this conference, you can react on the chat or with the hashtag LSF2020 for this session from hyperconnected to digital savvy. With professional tools, we tend to stay connected. We don't want to miss any urgent message, to be available and answer the questions we are asked as quickly as possible. Professional hyperconnection is more and more widespread in the world of labor. Our day is paced by emails and notification. The problem is that if you're constantly connected, then you're exposed to mental surcharge. And these risks are called infobesity, information and obesity, too much information, information overload. And Mathilde, with whom I work in the IMS, financed by the European Social Fund, and the State Ministry of Digital in Luxembourg, the Ministry of the Employment, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Workers are there with us to tell us a bit more. Mathilde, can you remind us of the risks of infobesity? Yes, of course. Welcome, everybody. Infobesity, as Laura just said, there's many risks. First, for well-being and the efficiency of workers, and more particularly an increase of the risk of stress, attention deficit. The quality of decision will become less and less good. The creativity will suffer, will be limited in the responses to everyday professional problems, less satisfaction at work, and less commitment, which is a value many companies are looking for. These individual risks are also become collective risks for a whole organization. That means a greater turnover, people stop working, information can be lost, bad information, false, fake information, and the collective productivity is limited, and innovation is slowed down. Absolutely, and if we were to summarize the Infobesity project in one sentence, well, in one sentence it's difficult. Let's take 3 sentences, because the project has 3 stages over 2 years, 2019 and 2020. The first stage is knowledge. That's what we spent on the first half year 2019 on. We developed a barometer to look at the situation and the trends in infobesity in Luxembourg, more particularly in partnership with LISA. And you can also download this barometer in its French or English version with the links that you will find in the chat. It's also available on the IMS site, www.ims.lux.lu. Now, if you move on to knowledge, then after knowledge comes exploration, testing solutions to minimize or fight against infobesity individually and collectively. For the collective tests, there we work with a team of voluntary people, members of IMS Luxembourg, to change one variable to try and solve a problem mentioned by the team. For the individual tests, in February last year, we developed a surprising training, to be able to limit the risks of infobesity to a maximum, or to a minimum rather. And we'll come back to this training later on with a witness account of people who have attended this training. The third stage is awareness creation, and here we're right in the middle of it. We share our knowledge, we share the results of our tests, we share some good ideas, and this can be in a digital conference like this one, or events, awareness creating events, or a virtual exhibition that you can visit all day long. It's called Infobesity, the answer of cognitive science. And all the moments of where people meet, the participation of companies, all the companies that participate in the project. And in the second half year 2020, a quiz, an information quiz, will also be made available. This project was rich in meetings, meeting people, with lots of inspiring solutions. We wanted to invite them here today to share this inspiration with you. Thank you, Mathilde, for this context. And let's now listen to our first speaker, talking about emails that have completely changed the world of work. Photos, documents are only one click away from our correspondent. So email has become indispensable today. Nevertheless, although it's great, the way we use emails at work also has a darker side. When you look at the management of emails in a company, the studies agree that emails can be a source of stress and loss of efficiency. So what is the impact of emails really, and how can we optimize the management of emails? To answer these questions, we would like to welcome Marc, Jean-Yves, Wiertz, and Thierry Kellens. Welcome. Now, to start our exchange, Marc, you are a doctor and head of health at ArcelorMittal. You work in the prevention of psychosocial risks. What can you share about professional emails? Yes, good afternoon, everybody. You mentioned the psychosocial risks. The psychosocial risks, there, the good management of emails is very important. When people come to me when I organize trainings on the psychosocial risks, I very often get different perceptions about emails and their impact in the way we manage our stress. Sometimes I'm surprised by the importance, or rather by the value, the weight given to emails today. I have some people telling me, well, look, 5,000 emails in my inbox waiting to be opened. It doesn't bother them. Others tell me that when they go on a holiday, they put in an out of office and saying, when I come back from a holiday, I'm going to delete all the emails I received in the meantime, and afterwards you'll have to send your emails again. Then there is the emotional aspect, the emotional side of email. Some people need to be permanently in contact, have all the information in real time. It gives them more dynamism. It is indispensable to them, while others, when they get a mail notification, they get a certain, they're afraid. So where is the cursor finally? What is the good management of emails? There are many solutions. I can present a couple of them today. We can talk about the biological rhythm. We know that the morning time between 9 and 11 is the period in the time where cognitively we are at our best performance, in our peak state. When we see how we manage our days, very often we start with meetings or reading and answering mails. And what I would suggest is that to use this time more efficiently, why not limit this time between 8 and 11 in the morning to really do those activities that require the highest cognitive performance, instead of limiting yourselves to routine activities. To do this correctly, you should also be able to isolate yourself, close the doors, if the doors can still be closed, put the telephone on mute, and switch off mail notifications. When you are in a deep reflection, any interruption could mean that you're losing about 10 minutes of working time, which is a lot in this stage. So I tell the people, let's put up an out of office, and I say I read my emails at the end of the day. If over the day there is an urgent request, please phone me, because many people have more respect telephoning somebody than sending an email, more restrained before they pick up the phone. So this helps us to better prioritize the emergencies or urgent matters and have more autonomy at the end of the day to manage our evenings. Now, second advice, the number of people you put in carbon copy in CC. I remember a professor at the university is that if you prescribe 3 drugs to a patient, if you want to add a 4th one, you need to eliminate one of the other 3. That's easier said than done, but it's worth doing so because you avoid many undesirable effects. You can use this method also in the management of emails. If I have an email that calls for action, I have one person, one addressee, but then I will think before I send carbon copies to other people, and I will select those people that offer real added value. What you should avoid is a return to all, because this is a reply to all, because that saturates our inboxes. Thank you very much. Sébastien Wiertz, you are the Director General of the Hertinger Pole. Management of emails is a passion for you. So what can you share with us today? Yes, I studied the management of information, management of emails. I've been studying this for a number of years. And what is disturbing in the multiplication of information distribution channels today, whether it's WhatsApp, tweets, email, all these notifications. I see people every day around me who are constantly being disturbed by vibrations and picking up the telephone. We absolutely need to tell them that each interruption costs 56 seconds in the most optimistic study. 50 emails a day, which is about the average of what you get. I only talk about emails, would cost 4 hours of our time per week. When I give training on the management of emails, I tell them, I will offer you 3 hours this week. Deactivate notifications on your desktop, because your work is not to jump on the next email coming in, but to focus on what you're doing. Notifications are one point. In this multitude of social networks, you are in forums and you get all sorts of newsletters, either wanted or unwanted. First thing you need to do, we talked about a holiday, Mr. Jacoby was talking about a holiday. When you come back from a holiday, is to structure and do the management of your emails, and not to delete these emails, these newsletters that you get, unsolicited emails, but to unsubscribe. Might take 20 seconds instead of 1 second to delete it, but you will, with the number of emails you get, you avoid too much pollution in your inbox. And then for your inbox, and as Dr. Jacoby was saying, we have our best cognitive state is between 9 and 11 in the morning. We get mail at home once a day. When I go to the mailbox, my wife does that. She takes the mail. She doesn't put it back into the box. So we deal with this mail, this snail mail. I can answer an invoice directly, pay it. If it's a tax return, it takes a bit longer. So you need to categorize the emails you get. those that need to be dealt with later, those that can be dealt with immediately, if it's not longer than 2 minutes, because you need a processing of your emails about 20 minutes, I'd say. 20 minutes, you'll empty your inbox. I'm not saying the time it takes to answer the emails, to make a distinction between what is next actions, information you are expecting, because the problem is not only the inbox, but also the outbox, the email sent out, and those elements that can go into the archives directly. That's what I could say. Thank you very much. That's interesting. Thierry Kellens, you are a co-head of the business development support of CACEIS, business support. You are a crossroads between various services and departments. You have many different tasks. At your arrival, the team was using a email distribution list, but you were not satisfied. Why? No, because this dissemination list is a very simple solution because it reaches everybody at the same time, but it's very polluting too, because everybody will receive the same information without knowing, as you were saying earlier on, who is in carbon copy. So same problem. Who needs to answer these emails, these mass emails? And the main problems we found is a problem of overlapping. Many people, several people get the same message, and also the answering of these emails. Quite often we have people who are in these mails answering the same people or not. Some people are not in carbon copies or not, and sometimes the answers will be different. So generally speaking, we gave up this solution because we lose a lot of time, a lot of confusion for the addressee, because you never know exactly who this message is being sent to and who this message comes from. The image is not always very good either to the outside world, because the people do not always get uniform answers, and a lot of useless email also. We are already overburdened by email, and this adds to the burden, never knowing whether it's really important or not, relevant or not. So you replace this list by a generic box. How does it work? Now, the generic email address, most of the support teams use this generic email address, a common inbox where a number of people have access to. Instead of having X mails, you only get one email going to one single place, reducing the complexity. The only thing you need to do is to do the follow-up of this inbox, because when a message comes in, it's a second box. You need to be rigorous to follow that second inbox. And as I was saying, you can say, well, this email I will deal with immediately, others I will deal with later. And here, if you have a generic inbox, you also need to indicate the name of the person having to deal with the email. So it's a bit more complex to set up. Our solution is that one person follows this inbox and dispatches the information to the people the emails are intended to, either phoning them or sending them a small notification saying, there's a message for you, could you please check the inbox? And of course, it's good to have a few persons as a backup, because such an inbox, a generic inbox, need to be more responsive, because all the emails get into this single inbox. Now, the positive point, the positive lesson. Now, the biggest benefit is that you centralize information, which gives you an overall view of all the discussions and problems being discussed in the team. So it allows the person dealing with the matter to acquire knowledge and also better know the correspondence we are working with. So it makes it possible to have a broader exchange, formal or informal, between the people in the team. It also facilitates the cooperation on the team, because if somebody deals with this inbox, dispatching the information, there will be some exchange, there will be discussions. The person dealing with the inbox will acquire competence, will be learning quite a lot more cooperation, much more cooperation. both formal and informal, so the exchange becomes more fluid. Thank you very much for your experience. Now, beyond the experience in organizing emails that we receive, there are also those emails that we send. Sébastien, you have a few examples of good practice for emails we sent out. I thought that an organization of the inbox would be enough, but when we analyzed a number of emails, not only in my company, but in a number of companies, I have found that the problem of the email overload is also the misunderstanding of an email. A badly drafted email can have 3 lines, and takes about a minute to understand it. So it's imperative not only to learn to write, but to structure your email. Last time I learned to write a letter was in primary school. We did not learn the business writing in neither of our generations. And this was an engineering company. It's even worse. So they need to be systematic. It's fairly straightforward. A, B, C. You start with action, call for action, A. 2 lines. Then the B, the basis of the email. These are the facts, and the facts plus opinions. Bullet points, for instance, if you have more opinions, and C, the closing. If the email is fairly long, at one point you need to repeat what you expect. If you want the document for Monday, 10 p.m., and if I make a number of comments on a number of pages, what I expect from you, I will repeat it at the end of the email, telling you the deadline is Monday noon. So it's important to have a structure in your email. Then I always use 5 elements when I write an email. Clarity. So avoid using acronyms and abbreviations and contexts which are known in your company when you're sending out an email to somebody else. Also, to have a basis, a fundamental basis. And that is, why am I writing this email? What is the topic of the email? What is this email about? And then to write in a concise way, not say why I write the email and then A, B, C, structure your email, and reread your email before you send it. So what is your advice in answering emails? So what I like very much when you receive an email that provokes an emotional reaction, stress, anger, or fear. In such a situation, you need to avoid answering right away. I'm talking about my personal experience when I receive an email that irritates me, that upsets me. I'm tempted to answer it right away, and I really need some restraint, because when you answer hot, in your stress, you cannot communicate. You cannot get the message across, and inversely, you might even trigger with your correspondent a negative reaction, probably, and have many consequences that will lose time and energy, and that will need to be managed later on. So take the time to take a step back and communicate efficiently. Yes, absolutely. Take a step back and look at the situation overall and put yourself into a positive state of mind to transmit the information and be in a correct communication approach. Thank you very much. Thierry, as a manager, how do you encourage your team to take some good habits, to adopt some good habits? Now, the good habits, we work in a team, and we want to work together well, losing as little time as possible. And there are 3 main points that we work on, that we focus on. First, education, repetition, and tenacity. Pedagogics or education is easy to understand. The people need to understand that there is an interest for everybody to work in the same way. We have a common tool. It doesn't help if somebody sends an email, another one sends an SMS, the third one uses a platform. If we have a tool and everybody accepts that some tools are better to communicate in the team or with the outside world, we were talking about email, but we have other platforms, SharePoints, we have Skype, well, everybody knows these tools. There are a number of platforms. Each of them has advantages and drawbacks. Once we have agreed between ourselves, then there's a good way of working, and tell the people in the team, make them understand that if everybody works the same way, we can have a better performance. So that's education, pedagogics. Then repetition. Sounds a bit simple, but repetition, we find that people very often hear information and send it on. So a good habit with people is to repeat and you did this was fine, no problem, but it would be better if you worked differently. Sometimes it takes a month, sometimes it takes 6 months, and sometimes it takes more than a year. So we need to support our team. The third point is tenacity. We need to continue supporting our team, and we ourselves need to remain consistent in what we are proposing, because sometimes we are tempted to send an email while it's not justified, or send another message. So it's important that we walk the talk. Marc, at ArcelorMittal, what would be one example in managing emails? What we are currently implementing, we want to set up an overall framework, a corporate policy to manage emails well. And this overall framework will define rules that can be applied by everybody. And then we offer a 21-day training, and every day, every worker will get a video, 5 minutes, giving some good tips and advice how to manage your email. So the workers can then explore them progressively and integrate them, and each team can integrate those messages or those lessons that they find most useful in this overall framework. And the 21 days is not random, it's intentional, because if you want to change a habit, the human being always needs about 3 weeks to change his or her habits, routines, and automatisms. That's what we want to achieve. Sébastien, you are busy publishing a book on the management of emails. What is particular about this book? I realized that trainings in email management was not enough. People come out of this training and say, now what? I will be again confronted with an inbox with 5,000 emails. How am I going to manage this? So at the beginning, I structured my books, inflow, outflow, how to write. But change is a difficulty in companies. So I defined 50 challenges per day, every week, whatever your rhythm, whatever your pace. But these different challenges give examples and offer various functions that need to be set up to better manage emails. Yes, I'm curious for the book to be published. So sending, receiving, and managing emails is not easy. I would like to thank all 3 of you for sharing these solutions with us. And when I would invite you to sit down to welcome our next guest. More than emails, well, emails is not the only thing in work. There's also the telephone, instant messaging, meetings, SMSs, Slack teams, all the other platforms. Information and communication today is multiple, multi-channel, multi-shaped, disseminated everywhere to everybody all the time. So we need to adapt the way we work. What strategy should be adopted to better harness the digital technology at work? Today we have Andreea Munteanu and Mireille and Gaëtan de Lavilléon with us here today. Welcome with us. You are already at your places. Gaëtan, you're a doctor in neurosciences. We work at Cog'X. Andreea, Mireille, you worked in the training Staying Efficient in a Hyperconnected World, animated by Gaëtan, offered for the first time in Luxembourg. And to put you into context, the training was divided in 2 hours of online learning and 2 hours classroom, to have a mixture between theory and practice and exchange in a group. And the aim was to understand what is at stake in the cognitive burden in the age of the digital age. Mireille, you are customer experience and knowledge lead, Victor Buck Services. You have a lot of work in your function. So what are the habits that you set up individually, and what are the benefits that you draw from them?
Well, for starters, I'd like to say that the training was right on time. It took place in February, and a month later, work organization was completely changed due to the COVID pandemic and the lockdown. So that meant more emails and more infobesity, information overload. So at the end of the training, I foresaw 4 major changes in my way to handle emails. First of all, I took some time, 2 or 3 times a day, to process all emails, not on a regular basis, but in certain slots. And these periods of time, I'll read the mails, I classify them, and I answer them according to their level of urgency. Second time, I thought about it, and as mentioned here, foresee certain notifications that can be taken out. They're defocused simply, and I deactivated them. Third element, when we have emails coming in and necessitating more time for the processing, instead of flagging them or putting them in a special file, and afterwards we have a to-do file with 500 emails, well, I foresee slots in my agenda and a quarter of an hour here and there to process them. Fourth element, mentioned already here as well, I foresee more rules and filters. For instance, for newsletters. Newsletters are useful, not important, but some of them are still useful, so they should not arrive directly to my inbox, but in another part to allow myself to read them later on at a less urgent time. All these recommendations are quite valid in the private area as well, actually. WhatsApp groups, for instance, or messenger groups, it's the same aspect. It's a matter of infobesity as well, and we can foresee these rules in these private areas as well. Thank you for that. I'm a Senior Communication Officer at Payconiq International. What are your insights after the training, and how to apply this in your professional daily business? So, well, just as Mireille, I think that was a really well-organized training just before the lockdown. Confinement or lockdown brought up quite a challenge. What balance to strike between private life and professional life? It's not easy. We're always in the private area, even for our job. And three insights for me that I practice in the daily life were the following. As Mireille said, well, first of all, make sure that we have sufficient space to process the emails, but alternate the activities as well. Let's have a look at the different types of activities for the day: administrative or activities with a high level of concentration and focus, and trade aspects as well. And we have to alternate. I'm a morning person. I try to have all creative work before midday and foresee more time for meetings, calls, interaction with colleagues in the afternoon. A second element that was quite adequately indicated: eliminate notifications. When I'm really focused and that I have to draft content, I stop all notification in Teams, on Slack, and even on social networks. I know that when you work in communication, there's always different levels of urgency, and the only urgency, or when there's a real urgency, people will call. They will take their telephone and not simply send an email or write on Instagram or LinkedIn or elsewhere. Thirdly, take regular breaks as well. We were quite lucky, or still lucky, to work in a company where the human factor is at the core of all business activities, and human resources has even invited us to take regular breaks and be quite conscious that when we step from one task to another, we have to stop for 5 or 10 minutes. We even have a statute on Slack that says coffee break with a little coffee mug as a symbol. So it was quite helpful because we deliver a good example here for everybody else. You are not obliged to be connected all the time during your 8 hours at work. That's not a sign for efficiency or an indication that you work hard. It's simply an element of being attentive for your own personal health to be more efficient and effective at your job. Thank you for that. Gaëtan, how are these practices good habits to take up? Well, for starters, I'd like to say that I'm really happy to hear all these reports from Mireille and Andreea. It's always interesting to see how cognitive sciences and neurosciences can allow for these short breaks in a short period of time, have a major impact on daily work practice, and the elements that were mentioned for different reasons are quite adequate. And total agreement with our natural functioning as persons, delete or take out notifications, work with filters or dedicated time slots for these different activities. It's a phenomenon we have in our daily job practice without really knowing. It's an unconscious filter in your brain, and this will be deviated when you're always under pressure, always solicited for this and that. And so we will have a tendency to go and look for them, even if we don't want to, and the attention will be taken off our present task all the time. That's a good reason to facilitate focus and concentration and to reduce levels of fatigue. To alternate between different tasks is also a very good thing. The doctor said so beforehand. We have a variation of capacities in the course of the day and according to the tasks to fulfill. And if we stay at a similarly oriented activity, there's a certain natural fatigue that will be coming up, produce more errors, lower levels of efficiency, decisions being made that are not so good in the course of the day. And if you organize your time differently, well, such a tendency will preserve our resources and have us to be more efficient. The anecdote of the statute with the coffee mug on Slack was quite nice. It shows how the organization can support such an activity with a low-cost solution to be foreseen. An individual action at starters will be a signal sent out to the whole of the organization. So these are behavioral aspects and social standards as well, cultural aspects being involved here. And at events like this one here with individual efforts, you have to see that it will take time, but you have to create and change a culture, and you have to share this as much as possible. And we are really happy to share today as well. Gaëtan was talking about the facilitation of certain habits and behaviors. What was easy to put this into place, Andreea? Well, most of all, we were 4 or 5 people in the Luxembourg team to take part in the training session. So we were at the same level immediately, and in changing our habits, we implemented this new and better practices, and it happened quite naturally. It wasn't a nuisance for no one. No one asked any questions about it. And we're all of us really happy to be able to work in a better organized way and in a healthier ways too. And for you, what is a good management in such a context? Well, you have to lead by example. That's our role as good managers. I'm really lucky to work with managers who do it as well. A good manager has to be aware of his or her own needs as a human being. This will develop more empathy and allow the teams as well to follow along. My boss goes on holiday. If there's an urgency, call me or a text message, no emails. And we do the same now. We don't take our computers along. We will not verify emails during the holiday period. And on my phone, I have no email app. Oh, that's a very good first step. Mireille, Victor Buck Services, how does it work with you? Well, at Victor Buck Services, especially during the telework context we had in recent times, all over the place, we want to improve communication on all levels. Try to limit and select, put certain hierarchy to messages sent to others, allowing this information to be useful and of benefit and not a source for stress for the others. As Andreea said, we have to lead by example as managers, and we have to sow the seeds for this. And this was part of the theoretical training as well. Sow the seeds and lead by example, and there will be a snowball effect afterwards. Second part, we are reminding people of best practice examples. It has been said several times. Good examples like differentiations between send to all or CC. If you send an email to someone in all, we expect certain answers. If it's CC, it's just as an element of information. Limit people as much as possible, not sending out messages to each and every one. Clear titles in the subject line as well. Brief emails. And this last element, to see how relevant is the long change of email contents between the initial topic up front and things mentioned at the end of it. There's no connection whatsoever. So no chain emails, but individual topics for mails, and start a new one for a new topic. And the last element, maybe, you have to privilege a verbal contact as well, oral exchange. If we have 3 ping-pong exchange phases for an email, well, email obviously is not the right means of communication, and during the telework phase, we try to have virtual sessions, allowing people to talk to each other, really. Great. Gaëtan, concerning these aspects, what do you have to take into account in your manager's role in implementing best practice examples? An essential element is awareness. Managers have to be aware of their own needs, for starters, have a look at their practice and what their co-workers are doing as well. You have to know that a lot of data show that the higher you get into a hierarchy, the more you have an attention for non-social data, and you will lose taking into account the individual needs as well. Not all measurements, but on average, you have the capacity to put yourself in the role of someone else and anchor this in your practice as well, to set up a framework allowing an exchange of all these perceptions and put yourself in the role of your co-workers. Second element, you have to find a common language. Once you have shared a global diagnosis in your team, and this can be supported if it's a big team, 4 or 5 people will be okay, but otherwise, if it's more people, you can ask for help and put into practice certain new approaches. We had a long list already. In certain books, there will be 50 of them or more, and the managers have to get together with their teams and see what's relevant for them and take time to put this to practice and to test as well. It has been mentioned here before as well that people should have an occasion to try it out and accept possibly that it will take some time. A certain behavioral change will need time, especially your approach to urgency, a work mode that has been practiced for years in certain occasions. So once again, the President panel here brought up very good tools to put this into practice, common language, and accept a certain time needed for the change. Thank you to the 3 of you. And what's your opinion in our audience? Do you have other examples of practice to stay focused in a connected world? Use the hashtag LSF 2020 in your messages as well. Thank you to all 3 of you. Talking about training, well, the business world has now a lot of communication channels to handle, as we just saw, but we have also a very easy access to a broad spectrum of data of all kinds. So do we always manage to be efficiently informed in this whole flow? Sébastien Wiertz has taken up this topic. Sébastien, good to see you again so soon. So according to you, internet research, you have to learn it. How and why as well? Well, one day I gave training in documentary research, an analogy between documentary research and Google research. I said, at a certain moment of time, everybody can search something on Google. I launched that thing, and everybody took notes. But imagine now if we have a Google search activity about artificial intelligence, for instance, then we will have the most relevant information, or information by those who paid the most to be on the upper part of the list. And then you can go into the tools, only articles published last year. And by doing that, you have another type of relevance. You have a more recent result, and there's a whole set of tricks. Looking for research documents, PDF documents quite often, or documents. So I would say, tell to Google, show me PDF extensions in your research or in search activity, and I'll adapt my search function and have in my networks connections done this type of search already. So my search approach will not be the same as yours. I'm in social networks and Google as well. Yeah, but then you're still confronted with huge volumes of information. What would be your trick to be more efficient time-wise and content-wise, to heavily to topics we're interested in? So relevant search activities in Google or other search engines has to follow along certain roles. If I establish a document, take reference in a whole set of documents to start with, to create a new document. So in Google, I have a look at what has been said about this service fund. So I will lose time doing that type of search activity. We have to capitalize sources we want to explore. A library, for instance, with a whole set of information. I'd like to have a closer look at this source and take it up for my second or next search step. So we have to explore this search activity and capitalize the sources that we have found. So to put them into a catalog with bookmarks or work notes, you have different tools at your availability for that, but you have to categorize the sources we found. And do you have examples for tools of that type? Well, actually, if you have a look at a paper or 2 or 3 papers every morning, it's quite ridiculous to go to lemont.fr, lesoir.be, Wurth.lu, others, lemont.fr, lesoir.be, l'essentiel.lu. You can take Feedly or Feedboard, for instance. Okay, show me in news, everything being new in lemont.fr, lesoir.be, The Guardian, whatsoever. And then you put it under news. I'm interested in photography, and I know there's going to be exhibition in Paris for Lloyd. And in the course of time, I put all these resources into my personal magazine, and we will collect our own magazine, putting it together from different LinkedIn, Facebook, and others. Allows as well to generate a magazine with a summary, with titles from the different articles, and we click of them, we will be directed to the specific sites, but we don't lose time going on all these different sites for starters. It's collected for you as quite playful, interesting, and not a lot of people know about this, but it's really efficient. Thank you for that. Thank you for this proposal. Thank you, Sébastien. So people really mastering search activities have a major asset at their availability. How can we put this at service for a whole network, a company? Companies have taken up this question as well, introducing knowledge sharing setups in the organization. Jean-Yves, Lamant, and Gilda Cavazza have joined us about this aspect more particularly. Let's welcome them. Good afternoon, Gilda. Are you alone? Apparently, yes. So let's wait a few seconds to see whether Jean-Yves will be able to join us. It's just Gilda. Okay. Your knowledge management lead at the Chamber of Commerce. How do you see the issues and your function and its role more particularly? Well, concerning main issues for an organization in this context, when you have a knowledge management department, well, essentially you have to know how you can become more agile, more performing, and more resilient, seen a recent past and its particularities. So a level of resilience that is of the utmost importance here in this context. So this is really important now more than ever. And we have also the matter of the organization's culture. How can we make sure that the identity, the culture of the organization can be spread all over department services and even beyond amongst the whole group? At the Chamber of Commerce, we have very different entities brought together. It's a matter of culture, quite interesting phenomenon in our analysis to see how we can develop systems, concepts, allowing this culture to evolve and to create a group harmony. Oh, there's Jean-Yves joining in as well. Hello to you. Well, this role, particularly Gilda, is this a technical matter or other aspects? Well, we have a lot of different issues here. It's transversal concerning the role as such. We have a major link, obviously, with the communication department, lots of internal communication aspects here, but also main issues on HR level. So it's really transversal, and we have to deliver a new mindset. So synergies, sense networks as well, and create a transparent organization as much as possible to have some dynamics coming in here. Concerning the role as such, it's really 50-50. It's shared between a technical aspect, implementation of an electronic handling of all documents, different cooperative and communication tools, and of course as well, the most important part maybe when we talk about mindset, it's the whole setting with the human factor, focus on the knowledge worker, if you like. So the person before the content. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Really interesting as an approach. Jean-Yves, you have a different approach. You're part of the pilot committee creating the R&D platform at ArcelorMittal. What are the needs covered by this new platform? Well, this platform was developed with a consultant called Mittal, and the platform is answering three major needs. First being the availability of useful knowledge. So it has to be useful, work for R&D. So first need is that research centers via our experts and researchers deliver useful knowledge of an internal nature in different plants, commercial services, strategic departments or management level as well. And this has to be validated by experts, the major product of R&D in this case. Second need, capitalize not only knowledge but know-how of the R&D as well. One of the initial needs here was to collect not only knowledge but also experience of all researchers and experts. And in that sense, it's rather an element of reasoning or arguments to be developed amongst the researchers and developers as opposed to the product being the result of knowledge. Reasoning is the process in order to produce these results. This has to be capitalized and shared. And the third need is to facilitate the learning curve of young people. It's extremely important in a company that the sharing effect from experts towards the younger members of staff is implemented, and the sharing and the autonomy of the young people in a quick learning curve of collective knowledge, which will be an advantage for company to advance and to survive. And the tool, at the end of the day, is a kind of a search engine then, where you will look for certain elements of knowledge. What's the difference as opposed to classic search engine approaches? Well, as we can see, the production process for knowledge is based on reasoning, just as important as the knowledge result itself. In the process of producing knowledge in the research area, well, you base yourself on a problem, find a solution. Based on a challenge, you find an answer. And based on a certain problem, you try and find a solution to the problem. So basically, what's important here, and we can see it in practice, is that there's a link between question and answer, fundamental importance. And we can see immediately what's being important here is that we formulate the right questions to start with. So important element in the know-how of R&D is to ask the right questions, relevant questions. And how do you do this? Well, in this context, we have the user submitting a question, and there will be algorithms, elements of a response being developed with different relevance levels for the different questions, and the automatic links created between the different pages proposed by the tool will allow us to have an access to resources that were not foreseen initially, which come as a surprise for part of them. In a limited area, you launch a search procedure and you arrive at all kinds of domains, and which broadens the reflections in general. Absolutely, absolutely. So searches from all kinds of origins. Very interesting. Gilda was talking about the importance of the human factor in the knowledge management. Is this the case for your tool as well? Well, obviously, the human factor is at the core of our approach. We talked about experts, but experts are working for users. And what's important here is that the utility is being developed, and how useful are knowledge elements being produced here. They have to be used usable and used by the interested parties, and they have to be in the producing process for this different levels of knowledge, because via the challenges they submit, the different calls they address to the tool, the different questions they ask the experts, not drafted necessarily in an accessible way, well, this will broaden the knowledge base and render the results more usable for themselves and others. That's a fundamental point here. And what we wanted to do here was not only make sure that such a level of cooperation exists from the moment of the producing of knowledge onwards, but also until the implementation, the usage, specifically. If they did not find what they wanted, or on the contrary, they did find it, they leave a message, so thank you very much, this is useful for my solution, or on the contrary, certain points are missing, could you add them? So you create something, but you draft it in a way that's really usable and being used. Thank you for that. Gilda, can you give us a few examples of concrete actions of knowledge management at the Chamber of Commerce? Well, absolutely. According to what Jean-Yves just said, it is important for us as well to know how we can really make sure people want to share their knowledge. The fundamental question being asked here, and you have to focus first of all on the persons involved, our members of staff. So we have two aspects to it where we try and answer these questions about the dynamics. We have IMS, information management system in our case, with the pure technological aspect, electronic management systems for documents, different other tools allowing communication and cooperation on another level than just emails. We have been talking about emails quite a lot now, but we try to produce a shift here as well to create a dynamics being another one as email-based to communicate differently. And afterwards, based on that, a whole set of metadata to be extracted. So sharing of knowledge and have more dynamics in its usage. But other projects have to be developed to make people want to share with other users because outside of or without their willingness to share, this will not happen. So we have foreseen a series of projects and concepts, and we have quite a lot of them, actually. I want to quote a few of them. We have, obviously, before that, I was talking about mindset beforehand. We have tried to have a maximum level of energy brought into leadership aspects, agile and Kanban. So if we've implemented a lot of training up front in order to change our training approach as well and to change the mindset and the dynamics as well. This was really important in this context in order to produce new concepts like community of practice, where we bring together different trade experts, legal experts, technical aspects coming together around one topical area. And these different trade categories can enrich the exchange, and we can have an access to it based on certain filters. Knowledge network is being built here, and this can develop an internal network, and we try to have more dynamics here as well to be anticipative and innovative in the approach. And then do the meet and learn setup for our members of staff. Experts are delivering courses, giving special light to projects that are not invisible, but you don't hear about it a lot, and not in an adequate way at least. And to have more focus on internal projects as well and broaden the public for it. This brings together other elements of knowledge, and we learn who's an expert for what. And then tips and tricks, learning corners if you like, with innovative topics, methodological approaches to have more agile activity here, new technological tools as well being involved here, and try to answer all kind of questions concerning remote working, telework, and others. And this allows us to be innovative here as well. Then we're going to implement this in the near future, Kaffeeklatsch, as it is called here. These virtual matters for encounters around the coffee machine, if you like. With the lockdown, this disappeared more or less, and we try and now have a virtual Kaffeeklatsch, as we call it, with informal networking at a level. We could see that the coffee machine is really missing for the internal exchange, and we create new types of networks at another level, not necessarily professional level. This is really important. The contacts and connections between people in order to have more dynamics for the process as well. And we are counting really on soft skills internally to have more dynamics in the development of knowledge, of content. So a lot of sharing, actually. Yes, absolutely, is imperative. Knowledge sharing, an adequate usage of the terminology here. And we've been talking a lot about generalized telework, the lockdown, feeling of being distanced from each and everyone at work. And the question to all of you, what kind of knowledge management develop or deliver in the crisis? Well, we have different approaches chosen during the crisis period. As a knowledge manager, we have a transversal role going into different departments, communication, HR, different concepts can be developed and brought here, but you have to ask the right questions as well. Questions about what the future will bring in the area of remote working. This term has been coming up recently. The Tuaregs of the tertiary sector is a quite interesting topic. We have exposed more or less the working areas or specific and classic workspace. So we spread all over the place now, and we have to create context, social links between the members of staff and with the organization as well, because an essential question coming up here is the following. I'm back home now in front of my computer and I do my work why. What is differentiating this work why? Very precise. If I do it for organization A, organization B, or organization C, what's the difference finally? The difference has to be clear-cut, and it's to be linked to the culture of the respective organization, and we have to develop more concepts here. There's a lot of challenges right now to generate this feeling of belonging to an organization, because in my sense, if you don't have that feeling of belonging, there can be no real sharing and willingness to share. So innovative, the idea of innovation as well, in a new sense. This allows us as well as knowledge management or department for knowledge management to put more focus on the anticipation, always a step ahead of new trends. So I'm trying to really take this seriously, always one step ahead of all kinds of things that might be coming in the future. And the COVID crisis and lockdown have shown us a lot of new challenges here. Thank you for that. Jean-Yves, I wanted to come back to a discussion you had about innovation at ArcelorMittal. There was a question also of a new way of producing a brainstorming activity to develop the right questions and the question to have an exchange. Can you say a bit more about that? Yeah, you're right. I just mentioned the fact that it's important to have a direct link between question and answer, the basic link for all research activity with the help of a consultant. We have to questioning, brainstorming for questions, questioning. So quite innovative as a term, yes, indeed, innovative method. Not only the concept, allowing people to take part in discussion based on the same objective and a main issue. Really interesting and quite productive as well as an approach. Thank you to both of you. Thank you. This concludes already our platform here concerning a lot of inspiring practices and have more agility in the digitized world and to be at the level of all challenges linked to hyperconnectivity and techno-savvy new approaches. Thank you for that. Please share your own practice examples with hashtag BSF 2020. So really looking forward to all your comments and suggestions. If you want to develop questions and approaches in pilot projects, well, you saw Mathilde initially and myself. We will accompany you with all your endeavors. We have a virtual exhibition to learn more about the functioning of the human brain thanks to cognitive elements is still open. We will come back here in 15 minutes for our next panel about the management of new generations, prepare and rethink our organization. Have a little break to recharge your cognitive batteries. See you in a short while, and thank you.